Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Irene and I'm a registered dietitian, and this video is for anyone that is going into their dietetic internship not knowing what to expect or how to succeed. And that's coming from a preceptor that has precepted students as well as new hires. Full disclosure, I do work in clinicals though, so that is the main perspective that I will be speaking from. But I feel like any of these principles could be applied to any of your rotations as well as to a new hire that is training for a new position. Probably the single most important thing as an intern is professionalism, and that means arriving to your site on time, wearing the appropriate shoes and clothing, and conducting yourself in an appropriate manner. And these should be very basic things, emphasis on the should, when it comes to any sort of professional setting. However, I feel like it still has to be said because there have been instances where things have surprised us. So before starting any rotation, you should email your preceptor at least a week in advance to kind of touch base about first day things. Some things that you may want to know and find out are where and when to meet your preceptor. You may also want to know where you can park, what the dress code is, and if there's any supplies that you should be bringing on the first day. So these are all very important things, and depending on your site, you may also have other kind of more administrative tasks or homework that you need to complete before your rotation, and all this stuff can take time. So that's why it's really important to kind of contact your preceptor 1 to 2 weeks in advance so that you can make sure that all this is sorted out and your first day can go smoothly. As a student, it is your responsibility to make sure that you reach out to your preceptor and that all the tasks that you need to complete are completed. We, and by we I mean me and my coworkers, have unfortunately had some students in the past that have contacted us very late, so the evening before, even the morning of, about first day things, and I feel like it's just terrible because it is unprofessional and it really gives off a very bad first impression before we even meet you. So depending on how long your rotation is, that can have a huge hold on how you are graded in your rotation. It is important that you make sure that you're staying on top of things, including like getting there on time. So make sure that you budget in enough time for like traffic, parking, that type of thing. Being late is another thing that can just reflect poorly on you and your work ethic. I feel like a lot of preceptors may not confront you about it like to your face unless it gets really bad, but it is something that we definitely take note of and is something that, you know, if we were rating you, that would definitely go on the evaluation. So during your rotation, you're also expected to pay attention and behave appropriately, which means not scrolling on your phone and not getting distracted by random things. And I have to say that specifically because my coworker literally had an intern. I think they were like in rounds or something, and she was just like playing with things on the wall. That is just very unprofessional and childish, and we were all shocked to hear that. If your preceptor is taking you anywhere, you better be on your best behavior. So that means paying attention. I don't care if rounds is boring. If you don't understand anything, you shouldn't be scrolling on your phone. You should be paying attention, listening, speak at appropriate times. Don't be rude to your preceptor. You never know who has worked where or who may have connections with who, and your performance as an intern may affect your ability to get a job in the future. I don't know about other facilities, but I know our facility, we do rate our interns after they leave. So preceptors will fill out our rating form, and we keep that so that if they ever apply for a job at our hospital, we can look back at that and determine whether or not to give them an interview or to hire them. So I feel like it's super important to just conduct yourself professionally. It doesn't matter if you want to go into that specific field or not. You should just be professional. And you also never know who is like friends with whose. I may have a friend in a different field. We could go out for drinks and we might start talking about, oh, she is hiring someone for a position, and maybe she saw that this intern rotated at my hospital. She might ask me like,
oh, I am interviewing this person. I saw that they rotated at your hospital. Do you know her, or have you heard anything about her?
And depending on what I say, that could make or break whether or not this person gets hired, because chances are if I have great things to say about her, that person is going to get hired over the next person that has the exact same resume because they have someone that can vouch for them. And conversely, if I have terrible things to say about this person, and they are definitely not going to get hired. You want to always maintain professionalism and conduct yourself appropriately. Communication. So this is a great life skill to have, whether it is communicating with your preceptor, your peers, doctors, nurses, patients, families. It is very important that you learn how to communicate effectively with your target audience. However, more than just like knowing how to speak and to write things, it is also important to learn to listen, because I feel like a huge part of MNT is motivational interviewing, and that requires you to really listen and understand your patients. So this is just all about like building rapport and communicating effectively and efficiently. I feel like things like note writing and talking with doctors also falls into this category. So I know it may be very anxiety inducing to, you know, talk to a doctor for the first time or message them on Epic Chat or write your first note, and that is okay. But by the end of your rotation, you should feel more comfortable with speaking with doctors and communicating with them effectively and efficiently, and also writing notes with little to no corrections. One tip that I would give for anyone that is kind of new to note writing is to make sure that everything like makes sense and it flows well. A huge thing is making sure that if someone else were to read your note, they would be able to find the reasoning for why you made a certain recommendation. So they should be able to see like, this patient had XYZ lab levels and this is why I'm recommending XYZ supplements. Or we are changing formulas for this patient and there should be a reasoning for why. It should be, you know, maybe it was like intolerance, or maybe it was family preference and allergies, something. I don't know. But it should say the reasons for why we're making certain recommendations. I think that that is a huge thing, and the note should just make sense, you know, because if it doesn't make sense, it's not going to be followed, no one's going to read it, and what's the point of you writing that note in the first place? By the end of your rotation, you should be able to really communicate very well, whether it's written, spoken, you know, relating to a patient. These things all are things that we will often grade students on in their rotation, and a skill that is very imperative that you have. Time management, another beneficial life skill to have. So obviously when you're first starting out, we expect that it'll take a little bit longer for you to kind of work up a patient and chart and do things. But over the course of your rotation, we expect that you should be able to be a little bit more comfortable with the EMR and be able to take on a little bit more of a workload, because you should be getting a little bit more efficient with your time and knowing where to find things and stuff like that. Another thing that kind of falls into this category is how you manage your downtime. So you should not be using your work time for personal things or for homework. Sometimes students may finish a task before we kind of like anticipate them to. We want to see that you're using your time effectively and that you can direct yourself to do other tasks that may need to be completed without us telling you to. Basically, we don't want to have to micromanage you. For example, students that rotate with us, they have to complete a presentation and some case studies by the end of their rotation. So for example, if you have finished charting for the day and I'm not ready to kind of go over things with you yet, you should be able to kind of just like start working on your presentation or your case studies without me having to tell you to do that. Do not let your preceptor catch you scrolling on your phone. Or what is even worse is you scrolling on your phone when your preceptor is talking to you. So if there's like an emergency or something that you need to take care of, let your preceptor know. Just communicate that with them, that you need a couple minutes to sort out a situation. We understand that things can happen, but the polite and professional thing to do is just to let us know. Don't like try and like take care of it like on the side. I'm gonna look over and see you doing that. No, just like let us know if something is going on and you need a couple of minutes. I feel like that's all kind of like self-explanatory, but of course we have seen these things happen, so I feel like I kind of have to say it. Adaptive. So some days may be just crazy, especially if you're working in clinicals as an intern. You are expected to be adaptive and flexible. So you might kind of like plan out your day one way, but then we get called to clinic and then we have to kind of restructure our day to see patients in the afternoon or something like that. Or another thing that is a little bit more frequent, changing plans. So, you know, we may decide to do something in rounds based on discussion with the team, but then the patient's condition changes and we may have to scrap that plan and adjust and adapt based off of that. Something else that happens even more frequently, you may hear from the team one thing, but then you go and talk with family and you hear something completely different. And you may have to quickly come up with another plan just kind of based off of this new information. Doing this quickly and coming up with a new plan quickly can take a lot of practice, but we do expect that you are able to make adjustments to your plan based on different information that is presented to you. And I feel like that's another super important soft skill to have, which also leads us into the next thing that I think is also one of the most important traits, which is critical thinking. So this is being able to draw conclusions from your basic knowledge and to problem solve. As an intern, you are definitely not expected to know everything, and that is the purpose of your internship. It is to learn. However, we do expect some level of basic knowledge though. So knowing some of the principles of MNT is definitely going to help you in your clinical rotation, especially in understanding like kind of what's going on and why we do certain things. So for example, I'm not going to expect you to know what to do with a patient with CKD3 that has rising BUN and creatinine. What I do expect is for you to kind of be able to tell me, I think that we may need to make some adjustments to protein or fluids in their enteral or oral intake. I think that that's like kind of like a great place to start and what I would expect from like an intern level. So what we're really looking for is that you're resourceful and that you can kind of connect the dots to come up with the correct answer. So a lot of times students may ask me questions or we may be discussing something and I kind of like to turn it around and ask the question to the student. I feel like there's more value in the student kind of coming up with the answer on their own versus me just outright telling them. So for example, if we're talking about medications that may affect nutrition status, you may see that the patient is on glycopyrrolate and you may be like, okay, so how does glycopyrrolate affect nutrition status? So I'm going to flip that around and ask you, okay, well, what is glycopyrrolate first of all? And an incorrect answer would be, I don't know, because more than likely we are sitting at a desk with a computer that has internet access and you can very easily look that up. So the correct answer would be that you would say, I don't know, let me look it up, or just like look it up and then tell me. And you would know that the medication helps with secretions. So then I would be like, okay, so how does secretions kind of affect nutrition status? And this one can be kind of tricky because I feel like when you first get into like clinical nutrition, you don't always think of things in a certain way. I may just ask another follow-up question. So what is the primary substance in secretions? And the answer is water. Okay, so if a patient has high secretions, what does that say about their fluid status? So if they're secreting a lot of secretions or water, that means that they could potentially be like dehydrated, right? So that means that they may need additional water to replete kind of their insensible losses. I don't always expect a student to get every answer right. I think that that's part of the learning process is you're going to get a lot of things wrong. However, I do expect a thoughtful response though. If you are saying I don't know to every question, answering that before I even finish the question, you're definitely not giving me a thoughtful response. But if you're giving me a wrong answer, but I can kind of see like where you're thinking, then I feel like that is showing and demonstrating critical thinking. And I think that that is like one of the single most important things that we look for, especially in like new hires, because we can teach you all of the knowledge things, but we can't teach you how to think. And so that is just a skill that you have to kind of already have. Lastly, this can make or break your experience, and that is having a good attitude. It's always more motivating and rewarding for a preceptor to teach a student that has a good attitude. And even if you're in a rotation in a field that you do not want to go into, you should still keep an open mind and have a good attitude, because I cannot emphasize enough, like, you never know who knows who. It's okay to be honest if like you really don't want to go into that field. Like, I don't care if you tell me that you want to go into sports or if you want to go into food service. Like, I'm not going to take offense to that. Maybe I know someone that knows someone, or maybe I have a connection that can get you a job in the future. But it's important to make sure that you keep an open mind and that you have a good attitude and that you ask questions. I feel like that is something that always is weird to me. Like, if an intern doesn't have any questions, I'm like, were you actually listening to me then? Because as an intern, I had a lot of questions, like not just necessarily about like clinical things, but like just about being a dietitian in general, like your first job, that sort of thing. And if you don't have a question, you better pull one out of your ass, because I expect a question. I ask my students, do you have a question, like multiple times throughout the day? If you are saying no every time, I feel like something is up, like something is like sus, because there's no way that I am explaining everything perfectly that you don't have any questions. I feel like your internship is also just a great time to have conversations with multiple different dietitians, because it's really the one time that you have access to dietitians in different disciplines and you can really get their take on things. So I would definitely take advantage of it. I remember as an intern, I talked with my preceptor about lots of things, like specifically my clinical preceptor, and we kind of were a little bit closer in age too. So I felt like it was easier to talk with her. We talked about what her previous jobs were like, her internship experiences, getting a job and job hunting, salary, all these different things. And I feel like that really helped me to kind of just understand the field a little bit better. And it really helped me when I was getting my first job. Whether you like your internship or your preceptor or not, just smile, be friendly, ask questions, and try to have fun. Okay, so I feel like a lot of these things were more on the basic side. However, as a preceptor slash employer, the soft skills are a lot of the things that we are rating students on and likely what your preceptor is going to evaluate you on, in addition to kind of your knowledge and things like that. We can always teach you the rest. Like we can teach you how to calculate things, how to do things, but these soft skills, the professionalism, communication, time management, adaptiveness, critical thinking, and good attitude, those things are things that we can't really teach. So those are really the core traits that we're looking for whenever you're hiring someone new. But I hope that you found this video helpful, whether you're going into your dietetic internship or your first job. If you did, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.